Hello, and in today's video we are doing a reaction to Watford's championship fixtures for the 2023 to 24 season. Yes, that's right, at 9 a.m. this morning on the 22nd of June it was fixture release day, and we got the info on who we're going to be playing and when we're going to be playing them in the upcoming championship season. Of course, last season was an absolute shambles for the Watford faithful. For the fans, it was just disappointing from start to finish, really. I mean, the first three games, a bit of false optimism, beating Sheffield United, beating Burnley. Both those two teams get promoted, and then Rob Edwards is sacked much too quickly for our liking, and the owners, once again, with their very much scattergun policy, hiring and firing, it's very unpredictable and it's very unstable, and ultimately, we got through ourselves another three managers. That's just the average for this football club. And it got to the point where the players weren't in a position to really look like they were caring. And at stage in the season, you just felt, what am I investing time into as a Watford fan? Because I can't relate to these players. I can't get excited about these players because they don't look like they're playing for the badge and working for each other. They're just playing as individuals. So it just meant that ultimately it was a pain in every sense of the word, and I'm just not quite sure really what this season will bring. I mean, I think it's pretty ropey at this point. You know, we don't want to be going towards mid-table obscurity yet again this season, but unless something big changes at the football club, whether that's the ownership, whether that's something else, you just fear that there could be a downward trajectory for the club. But you know, every season starts and you think, okay, give yourself a bit of some positive thinking, a bit of optimism. And I'll probably, blindly accept that optimism. But whether or not that's a stupid thing or not, I don't know. But we've just got to start fresh and hope that these group of players that we eventually form after the window can mount a promotion challenge of some sort, whether that's through the playoffs. It's unlikely we're straight into the title conversation because we weren't even near the playoffs in the end last season. So unless we have a real improvement of upward trajectory, I think it's going to be another long season. But that's the way the championship goes, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I thought I'd bring you guys my reaction of what fixtures we've got. So there's some interesting ones, I can't lie. With obviously Leicester, Leeds and Southampton getting relegated, there's some big clubs now in the championship. So it's going to be a tough one, I can't lie. But we'll just have to hope and pray it goes to plan. But in terms of the running order, we've got QPR to kick off the season at Loftus Road against Gareth Ainsworth's side. That's not going to be easy. Obviously, QPR did stay up, fortunately for them, and they kind of steadied the ship. But they're not an easy opponent to play. That's for sure. So we can't go into that too confident of having 3 points, but then it's a nice way to start the home campaign, really, because we've got Plymouth, who newly promoted. They had a great season last year, the Pilgrims, and it'll be interesting to see. Schumacher, he did a good job with them, but it's a big step up. So we would hope, if things go to plan, that's hopefully a winnable game. But we'll just have to see what point we are at that stage in the season. But yeah, ultimately, right, it's a nice kind of couple first two games, not too difficult, but also at the same time, hopefully enough of a test for us to kind of get the blood pumping and get the start we want. But then we got Stoke City away. That's going to be interesting. Obviously, Stoke's never an easy place to go, and Blackburn as well. So it's an interesting run really for that first month of the season. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but I think ultimately, I like those home games, and I think I like the fact we start away from home for once. It's the first time actually in a long, long time that we've started the season away from home. I think it was 2016 when we had Southampton on the opening day in the Premier League that was the last time. So it changed things up a bit, and QPR around the London area is fairly local to Hertfordshire, so don't mind that, but it's just no home game to start. So yeah, interesting stuff for sure. But we move into the month of September, and it starts to kind of get a bit more stacked with fixtures. In terms of difficulty, though, we're really struggling here because we've got some big clubs. Coventry, who only just missed out on playoff victory in that final against Luton. As much as that pained our Watford faithful, it was just Coventry, unfortunately, didn't have that ability that they showed most of the season. They just didn't turn up on that day, and obviously lost it on penalties. But that's quite a tricky trip to go to Coventry. It's never easy, and we didn't play well enough, definitely, in that second half of that game last season where you're 2-0 up, we surrender a 2-goal lead, and you think, okay, that's summing up our season, really. And Coventry, from that point on, didn't look like they were going to get playoffs. They actually still managed to from that point. So it just shows what kind of things can happen when a team pulls together in the right direction. Birmingham City, I mean, that's obviously, you'd hope, a winnable game, but it's interesting. Obviously, Troy has now left Birmingham, so there's not that narrative to spin there, but still a game you'd hope we'd do a decent job in. And then West Brom won't be easy, right? Because they're going to rebuild ahead of next season. I mean, they're going to want to go for the playoffs. So they just kind of fell short really last season, but they've got still a decent squad. And of course, the ex-manager of the current Watford team, the ex-manager of West Brom, Valérien Ismaël, it'll be interesting to see how he receives those West Brom fans at Vicarage Road. Leeds United as well, that's going to be really, really tricky. It's never an easy place to go, Elland Road. The atmosphere will be absolutely pumping, and you just know they're going to make it tricky for sides to get points. And whether or not Leeds bounce back up at the first time of asking is another question. Their defence is a real problem, and when Leeds do hire in their new manager, because I'm pretty sure it won't be Sam Allardyce, then they need to work out how they sort out the defence. But Leeds, certainly from an attacking perspective in the Championship, have always been a team that scores goals, so that won't be easy at all. And then we end the month with another tricky one, home to Middlesbrough. And I think Middlesbrough probably are up there as title favourites, possible automatic, but definitely up there as the biggest favourites to get promoted, because they were so unlucky to not even fit into the playoff final. I mean, they had such a great campaign. They looked like they might push Sheffield United for automatics. They didn't end up doing that, but the fact that they lost that game against Coventry, I don't think many people saw that coming. So Middlesbrough will definitely go strong again with a great side. Michael Carrick's a good manager, and he's really getting the best out of that group. So that's going to be an interesting one at the Vic to end off September. Hopefully that will be a big early statement from the Hornets with a win there. And then we start October with a trip to the Stadium for Light. That's not going to be easy. We obviously did drop points last season there. And Sunderland so narrow to really getting that playoff glory. But again, as was with Middlesbrough, they just missed out in the semi-final to Luton. So, interesting one that. Cardiff City as well, trip to Wales. It's interesting to see those kind of 2 away games to start October. If we're in a bit of a bad run, whether or not that will be a bit of a problem to have those 2 away games, I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. Then we've got on my birthday weekend, so that's going to be nice. Sheffield Wednesday at home. On paper, a winnable game, promoted club, but the problem is with Watford, we often, look complacent and lose in the winnable on paper fixtures. So that could be any score, but it's a nice fixture. Sheffield Wednesday back in the Championship for the first time in a while. It should be interesting that. Swansea City away as well in October, and then Millwall at home, and then we got November up as well. So I think October, really, when you compare it to August and September, I think in terms of points that we can get from that month, I think it's better. October's definitely better than September, but whether or not August is better than October, it's quite a close one, to be honest, because you've got some big clubs in there like Blackburn and like Sunderland. Like they're going to be up there in the promotion push, you would imagine, as possibly Millwall. So maybe August is slightly better than October. But we move to November, and this is where we start with Huddersfield, who did stay up last season, and Neil Warnock's going to stay there for another year. It's amazing what he can do. He finds ways to rejuvenate players. So look, we'll go to the Huddersfield game, hoping for something, but they can make it tricky at their stadium. So we'll have to see. Rotherham, that's a winnable game on paper. I say on paper, but Rotherham, did enough to stay up. Fair play to them. And then we got the big one, Leicester City. That's going to be interesting at the King Power. It's a nostalgia trip really with the Leicester Championship fixture. We've not seen it very often, but that playoff final in 2012-13, that 1-0 win for Leicester from Nugent, and you think, okay, it's all over. Of course, we had the dramatic 3-2 on aggregate, and it was incredible. But the King Power's not an easy place to go, especially if Leicester managed to keep some of their stronger players. You would imagine Maddison leaves, you would imagine a lot of players leave, but if they can keep like a solid unit in that squad, they got a good chance of bouncing straight back. They seem like too big of a club really to not get promoted, but we just have to find out. Norwich City, that'll be interesting. We would hope we can get Norwich where it hurts there, because they've had a similar season last year to how we had, where it was a real underwhelming one, and they just had the kind of stuffing knocked out of them. So if they have another middling season, hopefully we can push on past them and get a victory in that kind of. So it's kind of a bit of a mixed month really. November starts off fairly winnable games, and then it gets quite tricky. December though, that's always the big month of fixtures. The Christmas schedule is always hectic, and we start off with a trip to the KCOM. Hull City, of course, a place that we did lose last season when we were just tailing away towards the end of the season. And of course, the old Watford man, Ozan Tufan, haunting us as you would expect. Just our luck, really. But it'll be interesting to see if Hull are anywhere near the playoff shout. They weren't really last season. They were more mid-table, but should be interesting for sure. Southampton, that'll be obviously a tricky game. Southampton will fancy themselves getting promoted back to the Premier League at the first time of asking, because they've been there for a long time, and it just went wrong last season. But they've still got a decent players, some decent players. Just whether or not they have any kind of strong players there left, because Ward-Prowse you would imagine leaves, but still it won't be an easy one at the Vic there. And then Ipswich, that should be a winnable on paper. I know Ipswich had a great season last year, and they got like 100 points or something crazy, so they're not going to be easy to play against, but I would still fancy the chances there. And then Preston and Blackburn away, 2 away games in a row. So it's kind of an interesting December. You've got successive home and away games there. And both Preston and Blackburn are no pushovers. So that will be interesting to end the before the festivities. And then we got Boxing Day, Bristol City at home. Nigel Pearson comes back to Vicarage Road. Should be an interesting one for sure. Again, winnable. Bristol City are a bit of a middle table side last season, so you'd hope we'd get the victory there. And then Stoke City as well. Nice to end the year with a home game, but to have 2 home games is even better. So hopefully we kind of end 2023 with a bang going into the new year. And then we start off with a quite interesting fixture in the start of the new year. Plymouth. Didn't expect that, to be fair, but we have Plymouth to start our home campaign, and then we have Plymouth to start our away campaign in the new year. So really interesting stuff there. A trip to the Pilgrims home. And then we've got QPR again. I mentioned them starting the season, but that's at the start of the home campaign in the new year. It's going to be an interesting one, obviously, with their management of Ainsworth. Will they push to the playoffs, or will they just be a bit more trying to get stable after the last year floating with relegation? I'll be interested to see. Bristol City as well, and Sheffield Wednesday, those are some winnable games. So it's a very similar month really to August, with QPR, Plymouth in there. But Bristol City and Sheffield Wednesday represent 2 games you would hope we get points from. So we'd hope for at least maybe 12 points. Well, no, not at least 12 points. What I mean is at least 2 wins, I should say. And if we can get 12 points, then fantastic. But it's going to be interesting to start the new year. Then February is actually a mixed bag yet again. A bit like December, and a bit like November was. Some Cardiff had struggled last season, and at home we'd back ourselves. Less of those going to be tricky, so that's a bit of a harder one. Then Rotherham and Huddersfield should be winnable, and then Norwich a bit harder. So yeah, another mixed bag there really for February. Millwall to start off March. That's always a tricky place to go, the Den. So we'll have to really have our wits about us there. And then we got Swansea, who did struggle to push the playoffs, but they weren't that far off. So again, it won't be easy. Then Coventry is going to be really tricky. They only just missed out. but that'll be at the Vic. And then we go to St Andrews and then host Leeds. So it's quite a tough march, to be honest. Some big clubs in there like Coventry, Millwall and Leeds. So yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to struggle in March, but ultimately the run-in starts in April. West Brom at the Hawthorns will be a big game. Certainly could be a playoff decider if they're both up there. And then Preston and Ipswich as well. Those games more winnable perhaps. But then you go into like the last few runs of games. A away trip to Southampton late in the season could be a sticky one. Southampton, if they're up there, they're going to be a tough opposition to get points from. But then we finish our home campaign with 2 home games against Hull and Sunderland. Look, at the end of the day, those on paper should be winnable. But I say that Sunderland did do really well to get to the playoffs last season. So that won't be easy. And it certainly will be interesting to see who stays in that Sunderland team. Whether or not Diallo stays, players like that. It will be really interesting. But Hull, I fancy our chances with to kind of hopefully end the season from a home perspective well. And then Sunderland will just be a bit of a lottery. It'll be a bit of a shoot-off, I would imagine, if Sunderland can maintain what they did last season. And then Middlesbrough away to end the season. It's not often we start with an away game and end with an away game, but that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, a trip up north, North Yorkshire to end the season. It's going to be a tough game, those last 2, because, Middlesbrough last season showed they can really be up there. And Michael Carrick's got a good side. They're well drilled, so it's going to be a tough end of the season. So we really need to be in a good position to seal some sort of promotion by maybe the Leeds game, or maybe if we can seal it around Preston Ipswich, that would be perfect, because then the fixtures after that are quite up and down, quite sticky. So that's my reaction really. I mean, April, if you compare it to the other months, April is kind of yet again it's a tricky one. Outside of Hull and Ipswich, there's some tough teams there. So I would imagine that's going to be a tough April. And then we kind of have just the single fixture in May, which is a really tricky one, Middlesbrough. So yeah, not the best end to the season really with March, April, May. It's quite some tricky games, but hopefully we'll get enough wins in other games across the season to push that promotion charge. If we can get the title, brilliant, but I'm not expecting it because we just don't win silverware, it seems. But hopefully, Valérien Ismaël, if it goes well, could last the season. I know I fully expect that not to be the case because that's just not how Watford operate, and we go through a lot of ups and downs and go through lots of managers. As disheartening as it is, that's just the way we do things. So, yeah, that's the reaction to the fixtures. I'm going to leave it there, people. I hope you have enjoyed. Smash a like on the video. Comment down below who is your early front runner for the Championship in 23-24. I mean, looking at the fixtures, they are a really interesting read, and I think certainly that Boxing Day game should be hopefully a winnable one. I quite like that Sheffield Wednesday fixture on my birthday weekend. That's decent. And then, of course, Middlesbrough to end the season is going to be a really, really tricky one. But it all begins at Loftus Road against Gareth Ainsworth's QPR. Very interesting stuff. Smash a like on it. Comment down below your thoughts on the video. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.